Hello and welcome everyone to our ongoing webinar series, Explore the Arts. We have expert speakers here on our panel who will give you guidance on how to prepare for a college experience in the visual and performing arts. I'm going to start off by introducing On Point Education Advisory. We're a boutique consulting practice founded by Rachna. We at On Point are committed to providing personalized guidance to students as they explore education options to institutes in the US, UK, Canada, Singapore, Hong Kong, Europe, and of course, India. We believe in providing 360-degree support to the student, working with their strengths to plan life in and beyond high school. Today, in the second of this three-part series, we will explore the theater arts with Chris Andersson, founder of Nothing But Drama. Chris was the director of admissions for the drama department at NYU Tisch School of the Arts for a dozen years and is now an independent educational consultant who advises students who want to pursue an education in theater, film, or dramatic writing. To serve young artists in the best way possible, he founded Nothing But Drama in 2014. He provides guidance for undergraduate and graduate programs in the US, the UK, Canada, and Australia. And before I turn the stage over to Chris, just a couple of housekeeping announcements. All participants will be muted. The video will be live only for the panelists. Participants can use the Q&A box to ask questions. Chris and I will address the questions towards the end of the interaction. And now, Chris, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Rachna. It's very exciting to be here. I'm so glad to see all of you. Thank you all for coming. So I'm going to just dive right in. One of the things that Rachna and I discussed that might be helpful is to talk about kind of the different degree programs or different ways you can study your art in college, right? And I want to talk a little bit first about art schools on a spectrum from a full conservatory program on one end to a liberal arts college on the other end. And I do have some slides, Rachna, is okay? Should I pop them up?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Just in case it's better and helpful for people. Okay, so let me share this. Whoops. There we go. Can you see it?
Yes, perfect.
Great. And I'm trying to move the little thing so I can move the slideshow and play from here. So there we go. Okay. So you can see it and you can see us, right? Is it working? I hope it's working for everybody. So this is sort of what I want to talk about actually is this spectrum of schools that I just mentioned, because it's helpful as you, if you're a student, or you, if you're a parent or a counselor and you're advising students, to just think about the different schools that you're looking at as along a spectrum. And so on one of either a conservatory program, the other end a liberal arts college, and then there are some programs that are kind of a little bit more balanced that are in the middle. So a conservatory program is basically a Bachelor of Fine Arts. So that is going to be all art all the time, pretty much, with very little or almost no outside of theater academics. And I'll just use theater as the example through all of this. But if any of you are working with other art students, it kind of some of it this applies. But I'll just use theater as the filter today because that's our topic today. So what you will find there is that most of your coursework will be within the major. You know, you may have some introductory writing classes and things like that, but most of it will be in the major. But there will be, this is an important point, there will always be art-specific academics within the major. So because you're going to have to learn about the history and the theory and the literature of the field that you're studying, of theater in this case. On the other end of the spectrum, you have a liberal arts college or university that might present for you or provide for you a Bachelor of Arts, a BA program in theater. So many of these programs celebrate the fact that they are rooted in a liberal arts setting, so they leave room in the schedule and in the curriculum to bring in other academics into your life. So you could minor in another subject, in some cases double major in another subject, and your arts classes are just like your academic classes, meaning you let's say in a liberal arts college, you have 5 courses you can choose from, 5 classes you can choose from in a semester. And so your acting or singing or dance classes will be classes just like your philosophy or history or foreign language classes would be. So you don't have on this end the intensity or the immersive quality of the conservatory style training. So it's a different level of engagement. Okay, and then there are some programs that fall in the middle, which would be that it's a more balanced program with artistic and academic work, and they are both given equal or relatively equal weight in the curriculum. These are usually a BFA, but instead of, let's say, for example, 5 days a week of artistic training in the conservatory side, it might be 3 days of conservatory training and then with 2 days of academic classes. That little example, actually, I'm using for the balance is NYU's schedule. In that there are 3 days that the students are in their studios all day long from about 9 in the morning till 6 at night. And that's where they're taking all their classes in acting technique and vocal technique and dance and movement and script analysis and scene study and all of the, delicious, yummy stuff that you're coming to drama school for. And then on the other 2 days of the week, that's when you have the academics. And those would be theater studies, which is what we were talking about. That's the history, theory, and literature of the field. So theater studies classes. General education classes would be on those 2 days, and electives would be on those 2 days. So that's how a balanced program would kind of look. And just to quickly run through this just quickly, I would say there are kind of 5 ways that you as a student or your students might engage their art in college, kind of going descending order from a level of intensity. So as I mentioned, there's the BFA on one end, which is full conservatory and much more immersive and intense. There's the BA on the other side, where a student would engage with their art and major in their field. And I would say, well, I'm going to take you through it. And then there's you doing a BA in a liberal arts subject, but bringing theater into your study. And then there's studying away for a semester or maybe working in a professional training conservatory. Rachna, how are we on time? Is it okay to run through this fairly quickly, or would you like me to?
No, absolutely. I think you should. I think it would really help the
Great.
audience.
Okay, perfect. So these are some examples of what kind of a student should consider a BFA. So this is a student who's totally driven. They know this is what they want to do with their lives. They're ready for the rigors of a professional training conservatory curriculum, meaning they understand kind of what they're getting into, and we can talk a little bit about that later. They might already be studying with voice teachers or taking dance classes or have an acting coach or be in a drama camp or working in their community theater. They understand that they'll be in studio all day long for a few days a week, or like I said, all week long. And they understand the idea that this is not going to be as academic in the BFA program. And just a little point of that, the BFA might also be something for someone who knows they want to do their art, and that the school side of things is maybe not as strong an interest for them, the academics, or maybe even that not their strong suit. Maybe the art is their strong suit. So maybe a conservatory that has fewer academic requirements, outside of the major, maybe that would be something for that person. On the other end, with the BA in theater, which is this, it would be someone for whom academics is still very important. So they might not, a BA student may not want to necessarily do this professionally, but they're like, I'm interested in theater and I want to have it in my life and maybe study it, certainly at a more intense level, but I'm not sure what I want to do with this. And I also have other academic interests. They also might want to be in theater, but they're unsure in what capacity. Like they're not ready to go into a BFA acting program because they're like, I love theater. I love working backstage. I love performing. I love sitting with the director. I love making costumes. So I don't really know where I fit in. So a BA gives you a little bit more of a broad understanding of the field. And so you can kind of figure out how you fit within that. This also might be for a student who's not ready for that intensity of conservatory style training. Like that might be a little too much for them, and that's okay. You can do BAs. BA is fine, and you might have an interest in the field that lies beyond just the performing. You might want to be a teacher or become an archivist or historian, for example, and then you would want to have access to other types of courseworks. This is what I did. It was a BA in theater and dance at Trinity College. So I had that where those classes were just classes like my English and philosophy and history classes were, and I got training that way. Just one little caveat as you're going through the program: most BA programs do not require an artistic review. However, every so often, one does. So just don't assume it doesn't because it's a BA. Just make sure you look carefully at that. And then also sometimes it's tough to find, not tough, but every so often it can be tough to find the BA program on the website. Where does it live? Because most of them are within the theater departments or the colleges of performing arts at those schools. But every so often, you might find one somewhere else, like at the New School, for instance. The BFA is at the New School for Drama. The BA is at their liberal arts college, which is Eugene Lang. So it's just something, as you're doing your research, if you're interested in BAs, they might be somewhere else. This is another little thing I just wanted to throw in there, is if you did a BA in a liberal arts subject, but you could bring theater in. So this is the kind of student would be someone who's interested in theater but doesn't want to pursue it as a major because they have other academics that are more important to them. So a key piece of advice is in your research theater options for non-majors. So if you're like, I want to study psychology but I love theater. Well, what are your options at that school? Is there a student drama club where you can do shows? Can you participate in the productions that the department is giving, or shows or concerts, either performing or working backstage? Or can you take any classes even if you're not a major? So that's something to add to your research questions. Tish has a particular, and I have to say here, I keep forgetting, is that, I used to work for NYU. I'm not here to advertise for NYU. It's the easiest thing for me to use as an example. Tish has a program called Open Arts, which allows non-majors to take courses in all the undergraduate departments at Tisch. So you could be an economics major and come over to Tisch and take dance classes or take photography classes or take acting classes. So it's those kinds of programs you want to look for when you're doing this. And then the last little bit is studying outside of school is the lowest level of engagement, where maybe you take a semester and you study somewhere for an intense, concentrated study of theater at a study away program. Or maybe if you're in New York City, you're like, you know what, I'm going to focus on school completely, and then there are lots of professional training studios that I could take some classes at on Saturdays or in the evenings, and that's another way to do it. So I think, yes, that you could, and it also costs a lot less money. That's that last little point, is that it costs a lot less money. And is this the time for that slide? I'm forgetting the flow at the moment because I don't have it up on the screen.
The slides have not been moving. I don't know if you meant for them to be.
What? Oh, I'm so sorry, everybody. I've been moving through the slides the entire time. Okay, well, all right. Let me hold the line. Hold the line. Let me see. So you only saw that first slide this whole time.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Could you see this slide now?
Yes.
Okay,
And
that's so weird. So weird.
That's perfect, actually, because I was going to ask you, what does studying theater even mean? Is it only acting? Or is there something, if somebody's they love theater, but they don't want to act on stage, what else can they do?
Yeah, and that's a really important thing, because there are so many options. These are some. And I know that this is a question, Rachna, that you had earlier, and I happened to have a slide about this from another presentation that I just brought in here. So it was perfect for your question, because you can see, from the performing side, you have acting, you have musical theater, you have screen acting perhaps, or comedic arts if you're interested in comedy or stand-up comedy. But there's so much else. Directing and playwriting. There's so much in the world of production and design, set design, costume design, lighting design, sound design, stage management, and different aspects of management, production management, or arts administration. Maybe you want to run a theater someday. You know, maybe you want to become an artistic director of a theater today and influence your community on what kind of conversations they're having, because you're wrestling with some stuff and you create the programming, audiences come in, then they walk away having these wonderful conversations. You know, maybe you're someone interested in dramaturgy, which is about which is about kind of doing researching the history and context of a production. And they also work with writers and directors on the script itself too, to help it make sure it's saying what it really wants to say. There's theater education if you want to be a teacher. There's producing. I mean, there's so many options here, so I don't have to read them all, but. It is a very, very wide field with a lot of ways that you can exist in it.
Great. Now that we have an overview of the different types of theater programs and the many verticals the students can pursue, I know the burning question on everyone's mind is, how does the application process for a theater student work? Could you share with us the elements the student should be focusing on while working on their portfolios, and the application timeline, and of course the artistic review? What should they expect?
Yes. I'm gonna pull up a slide. I'm gonna try it again because why not? Why not? Why not try it again? But I have to find you guys. I lost you guys. Hold on. There you are. There you are. There you are. Okay, I'm gonna bring this slide up. I won't move it. Okay. So this one, hang on, I'm just want to get it so that I can do this. Okay, can you see that?
Yes.
There's nothing on it right now. There we go. I'm just gonna make
artistic review.
Good.
Yeah.
So this is so the artistic review. So applying to an arts program, right? You're doing the application process as you would for any other school, but then you have this whole other parallel process to the applications, and that you whoops, I just lost. There we go. You have this whole other parallel process that is the artistic review. And that means preparing an audition, perhaps, or preparing a portfolio, depending on what aspect of the field of theater that you're in. So we call it artistic review as kind of a broad term to encompass both auditions and portfolio reviews, as well as something that can be something that'll cover all the disciplines. And also, sometimes the audition itself or the portfolio review includes a conversation with faculty or an interview of sorts. So it's a little bit more of an encompassing term. And this process that I was talking about, it comes with its own dates and deadlines and requirements and guidelines to sift through, and materials to gather and put together for your portfolios or for your auditions. So really, in a way, applying to an arts school is twice the work for arts families, you know. And another little piece I put in there is that each school, when you're doing your research on the artistic review requirements, each school kind of has its own set. There are similarities across the schools, but sometimes the details are slightly different, and you have to do what that particular school wants you to do. So it's something you want to be very organized and careful about. Okay, I stopped the share because I didn't want to.
So what kind of things, when they're submitting their portfolio along with their application?
Yeah.
So actually, I have two questions. One is, what kind of pieces should they be including in their portfolio? And second is, how important is the other part of the application, the Common App essay and the school-specific essays? Does the artistic review / portfolio and the other parallel part of the application have equal weightage, or is the portfolio more important for a theater student?
For a theater student, I would say it varies from school to school. I wish it was an easy answer. I think to answer that question first, it depends on the program. It's often reflective of the way the program is built. You know, if you're in a program where you are having, let's say, well, like let's say, like for example, the NYU program, right? It's a more balanced program where it's basically, you know, equally weighted with artistic work and academic work. That's wonderful. The application process itself is also, it's a 50-50 weight on the application and the artistic review. A school that is heavier, more conservatory style might have more weight on the artistic review than perhaps on the academics. I mean, it's very varied because, you know, you have some programs which are really art schools, like, you know, like say the University of North Carolina School of the Arts. It's a school of the arts. That's their main thing, right? So they might be heavier on the artistic review, but then you have somewhere like Carnegie Mellon, which is also more conservatory like, but it's Carnegie Mellon, so their academic requirements are very high. So it does vary from school to school. And then the first question was what to put in there, right? What to do with the artistic review. So, you know, in theater, for the auditions, an audition would be for if you're going for an acting. Hi, Natasha. So for acting or for musical theater, you'll have auditions, which would be in an acting artistic review. Let's say it would be you would have a couple of monologues, usually around 60 to 90 seconds each. The monologues, they should be contrasting in some way. So you want to show, I mean, you want to show, you have two opportunities to show yourself off as an artist, right? So you should take those two. So when you're putting your two monologues together, they should be very contrasting, meaning they don't necessarily have to be dramatic and comedic, you know, serious and funny. They could be. But maybe you're someone who's saying, you know, I'm not so funny. That's not my thing. So maybe then you could pick two dramatic monologues, right? So that you could say, well, one is like very heavy and very emotional, and then the other one is lighter, but it shows how you can handle text, or it's a different relationship that with the person you're talking to. Maybe one is a conversation you're having with your best friend, and the other is your conversation you're having with a parent or something like that. So they're different dynamics and different things, or the writing styles are different. Because, and I belabor this point a little bit because I find that young artists sometimes get very comfortable in a certain type of performing because they are good at it and they get good response from people when they do this. So they think, well, I'm going to pick two monologues like this, and there'll be two amazing monologues. And then they go into their audition, and we're sitting there watching, and then we see like, oh yeah, they are, those were two amazing monologues, but the second one didn't show us anything different. So it becomes a missed opportunity to show a different facet of you or a side of you or as an artist. So I highly, that's extremely important. Usually they have to be from published plays. You want to find characters that are around your age. And usually they say no props, you know, no holding a phone and talking, you know, no props, no costumes. And they also say don't put on an accent for this. We want to hear your natural voice. So that's, and then sometimes the acting evaluation comes with an interview or a conversation with the faculty member that's in the room with you as well. With musical theater kids, you'll have the same acting evaluation, but then you'll have a singing evaluation, very similar to contrasting songs, song selections usually, not the whole song. And you'll do that in the singing evaluation, and again, contrasting pieces. And then with then you'll also have a dance component, often, not always. And that might be submitting a video of you dancing, or if you're there in person, it would, maybe you'll be taught some choreography right there in the room, and they go over it a million times, and eventually you kind of dance it as a group while the evaluator watches all of you and makes their notes. So that's kind of what a musical theater would be. On the portfolio side of things, let's say if you're a director and your assignment is to create a director's notebook for a show that you maybe have directed, or perhaps a show that you would like to direct, and to put all that information into this portfolio so we can understand how you think as a director, kind of to get up into your director head, right? And so these are the things you'll put in there would be, okay, so what is your overall vision or concept for this production that you're talking about? Right? As you were reading the play over and over, what themes emerged for you? What are your thoughts on the different characters? What are your thoughts on the relationships between those characters? What are your thoughts on the different design elements? What will be the set and the costumes? And how are you going to light it? How are you going to stage this? Will it be on a stage, on a proscenium stage where the actors are up here and the audience is out there? Or will it be in the round? Or will we, the audience, travel around your school while you're following your actors around? Like, how is that going to work? So we want you to think, we want to hear how you understand how you think as a director. And you'll also include any examples of anything related to theater directing that you would want to share. You know, I was an assistant director on a show, or I observed a director at my community theater and I sat in on rehearsals, or I took a class, or I directed a student show. So you want to include all of those things too. And it's very similar for the stage managers and the designers. So set designers, costume designers, sound designers, lighting designers, etc. You're going to present a portfolio of your work in your field. Sometimes with production and design students, they ask for maybe a couple of fields. Like, what are your areas of interest, right? Maybe you're mainly a costume designer, but they ask for maybe a secondary area of focus, and that might be, you know, well, I love costume design, but I also am interested in scenic design, in the set design, and what's going to go on the stage. So then they ask you to provide examples of that, either work that you've already done, or work that you would, you know, do a fantasy project. Pick a show that you like and that you love and that you want to see, that you want to design, and then just do it for this project. So we're looking sometimes at photos, at sketches, at drawings, at inspiration kind of books or journals. We're looking at the lighting plot for a show that you did, or we're looking at a script where you have all your notes as a stage manager for all of the cues that you need to call. You might even we've had people bring dresses that they've made, or not dresses, costumes that they've made, you know, with them to say, this is what I do. Here it is, right here, you know. So it's all of those options. So those are kind of examples of the sort of artistic review process, or the artistic review part.
Great, thank you, Chris. And now I want to welcome Natasha Advani. She's a theater student who's joining us. Natasha, could you share a little bit about your experience as you prepared for your theater application and the artistic process, the artistic review, sorry.
Hi, Rachna. Hi, Chris. I'm really glad to be here. So hi, everyone. My name is Natasha Advani. Thank you. And I am currently going to my second year at York University, which is in Canada. So I also was mentored by Chris for this process for the 2020 fall winter intake. And I applied to schools in Canada and the USA. In terms of my just application process, I think what was really beneficial for me was figuring out and doing thorough research on the different schools and their curriculums. It may seem a bit daunting and a bit overwhelming at first because of a lot of the times you don't even understand half the terms that, every school has their own sort of abbreviations and terms that they use. But it was really beneficial in terms of making my decision and for which schools to apply for, because I sort of figured out that, okay, this is a school that's focused on USC's acting program. Conservatory is really strict and they have 20 to 25 hours, but we completely committed to that. Whereas York has more flexible, like a different number of programs and is more flexible in general. So I think not just focusing on the curriculum and even getting in touch with past students or faculty members from the universities, just to understand like what are your options when you go there and what is expected of you and what you can expect from them is really important. I know a lot of, at least for me, other countries were not very marketed as much as the States was. And everyone always thinks as if they need to go like, oh, okay, these are like the top schools. And if you go there, everything will be sorted. But from my experience, that's not true. Because focus more on what the school has to offer and whether it meets your needs rather than, the brand or the reputation. Obviously, reputation matters, but the brand of the school, and it's like, oh, I'm going to this school. I think that was something that a lot of people are like, oh, but only if you get into these schools does it make it worth it. But as long as you're getting your needs are met, that's what matters the most. And I think just understanding what do you want out of your artistic education really helped me in terms of choosing my schools and also making my decision. And it sort of also informed the schools about what sort of path that I would like to choose. For example, I know that I don't want to be in a 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. acting conservatory program. I want to explore like directing, writing, dramaturgy, different sort of aspects of storytelling. So I was able to like include that in my application, in my extracurricular section, and while having the discussions. I think it also is beneficial to have your research done, because when you go there and just have more specificity in your applications, because it shows the schools that, okay, you know what, like you really know why you want to be here, and that's what they want to see. Besides this, I was just reading some questions, and a lot of people mentioned like, what do we put in our extracurriculars? I feel as if the universities are currently sorry, that's my dog, please ignore him. Universities are looking for diversity and are looking for people who've had like different experiences in different fields also. So it need not be that you have to have done like 20 plays in high school, or have studied theater in high school to get into a university. I've personally done like 1-2 plays in high school and I still got into university. I'm so sorry, just please ignore my dog. Yeah, I've personally just done 1-2 plays, but then I did a lot of like organization things and a lot of arts education extracurricular. So I included that. I think obviously keep a section in your extracurricular resume profile where like the arts is first, but also do include the other experiences that you have, because that definitely will inform them about this other different types of skills that you bring to the table. And when you're in art, you can sort of derive knowledge and derive creativity from any experience that you've had. So I think that is really important. And don't feel stressed if you haven't done there's no one particular standard, like they only want this. They're willing. That's what's so interesting. They're willing. There's a lot of openness towards like everything that you have to bring onto the table. I think in terms of my application, what helped me really focus was just selecting I only applied to 6 schools. One second, I'll just let him out. I'm so sorry about this. I'm so sorry.
Actually, I'm really glad that Natasha talked about the extracurricular activities, because that, given the current state globally, students haven't been really able to get out and do anything. Everything has been online and virtual. They haven't had any opportunities. They haven't been able to go to school. So, school plays gone out of the window. So I think that's a big concern for everyone. What do they put down? how do they show their passion? How do they showcase their talent, and how they can engage with the community and theater?
Yeah, I would say, to jump in, I would say, um, at least we've all gone through the same thing, right? So everybody, at least in this last year, it's been challenging to perhaps do their art and with the way that we've had this last year. So at least everyone's on the same plane. What I would say is what you could do, just as Natasha was saying, about putting together extracurriculars and looking at everything that you've kind of done as an artist, and kind of gathering all of those bits and pieces, anything related to theater that you've done. If you're a writer, or if you're a poet, or you're a producer, like Natasha's done so much, or like she said, with theater education, to gather all the stuff that you have done through your high school career, and then think about going forward. Now you have a few more months, right, before the applications have to be submitted. Is to say, well, maybe there are ways that I could bring some more art in now. If you haven't already been doing it, maybe you, with your friends, have been doing readings of plays on Zoom, or you're like figuring out how you're making little movies, or you're like figuring out how can we all sing happy birthday at the same time, so maybe you're figuring yourself out in this world. So add those into what you've been doing as a creative person. And then maybe if you feel you still need more, think, now you've got these next few months, think of how can you bring art into your world, actively bring it in right now. Given the way things are, wherever you are in the world, we're at different places with this pandemic. So if things are a little bit more open, can you get together with your friends and create something? If not, how do you navigate creating something theatrical on Zoom? So I think it's thinking in those terms. You have to think a little creatively, because yes, nobody has any long lists of plays they did over this last year. So you're absolutely right. It's a great question. Great point.
There were some questions about, are local camps enough? I mean, in the US, especially, where there are a lot of theater camps, is that a good idea for students to join that?
I would say that any kind of theater camp situation will be a wonderful experience for the students, right? It'll be a lovely little gem of an experience. They will grow as people, grow as artists, grow as students. They will meet other like-minded people who love theater. You're all going to be together and you're all going to create stuff and do stuff. So I think any opportunity that you have, it would be good, because it just helps you grow and helps you become more comfortable in the arena of theater, and that comfort can turn into confidence when you have to go through the audition process. So any experience would be good if you have someone who has the ability to, or means to, or to go to a program, let's say in the US. You could think about, if you have some particular schools that you're interested in, and if they have a summer program, one of the nice things is if you're spending 4 weeks at one of your top choice schools, you're getting a feel of the school because you're there, and maybe you're meeting some of the faculty and maybe some of the students, and you're on campus, and you're saying, is this the right, and you're learning about the theater program too. So you're in those few weeks, you're getting a sense of, is this the right program for me? Is this the right school for me? Is this the right city for me, or town for me? It was great being in New York City for 4 weeks, but I don't know if I can handle 4 years. Like, it was kind of a lot. Whatever it works for you, you learn a lot in those. So, yeah, I'll stop there. I can go on for a while.
So I have some more questions. Natasha, did you want to say something?
Sorry. And one more thing for sure is that, can you hear me? Can you all hear me?
Yes,
okay,
absolutely.
I'm so sorry. And another thing is that universities also understand the situation that you've been in. And if you, for example, there's a lot that you could do with online theater as well. Like, I myself directed a short film, and now I'm doing a play online. So even if it's like you have a collection that you've been reading, like just research that you've been doing, you can always say, oh, I've been doing this research work, and like cover the topics. Or if you do have like an event that you're organizing, you can always bring elements of theater in it, in terms of like, oh, I directed like certain talks and created the creative sort of flow for this process. So whatever you have, like you can make it work, is what I just wanted to tell everyone.
Okay.
And I just want, sorry.
Go ahead. Nope, go ahead.
I just wanted to know if you'd like me to speak about like the choices of the monologues and all of that, or will that come later?
So I think Chris had addressed that aspect, but as I put forth the questions that people have, then maybe you can jump in and talk about that. Yeah.
All right.
So,
Can I just throw? Can I just throw? Sorry, one more thing about, because Natasha, you sort of mentioned this. Another option for summer programs is a lot of programs are doing online versions of things. So that if you wanted to, if you were in Turkey or in India or in the Bahamas, you could do perhaps a virtual a class. At many of the summer high school theater programs in the U.S. certainly have gone online last summer. Some are continuing that this summer. So that's another option where you don't have to go anywhere and you could still be online. And I had a student of mine last year. She was in Bahrain, and she did the Tisch summer high school program in the Meisner studio. And I was like, how did that go? She goes, it was amazing. She said it was so amazing, because she said that they all bonded and they had a great time and really learned a lot. So there are a lot of programs out there that have that component. So that's another option for you this summer if you wanted to add a little something else.
That's great. That's fantastic. So now coming to portfolio, some of the questions are, so if you're applying to a BA program, as you said, some programs may require a portfolio and some may not. But if you're not applying as a theater major, can you still submit a portfolio? And how many pieces should it have typically?
Good questions. So in a school, right, if the portfolio is part of the requirements, if there's an artistic requirement for a department, they'll give you pretty specific outlines of what they're expecting. It might be a portfolio if you're of five projects or one project, and they usually list the different components. It could be photographs or sketches or drawings or all of those kinds of things. In some cases, you'll find a BA program might say, we do not require an artistic review. However, if you want to be eligible for talent scholarship funding, so a little extra money, you need to submit an artistic portfolio or a video of an audition. So it's not about getting into that program, but it's saying it'll open up this a little extra financial aid. So that's something to look for on programs. And then, like you said, if you're applying not to an arts program, but you're applying straight to the school, some schools do accept, excuse me, some schools do, and then even some BA theater programs do accept artistic supplements or portfolios that they say, look, if you want to share something else about yourself, we're happy to see your stuff. Not all the schools do. Some of the schools say we won't accept anything except what we're asking for. But others accept an arts supplement, or they say if you want to submit a portfolio of the work that you do, if you're an artist or a musician, if you want to send us videos of you playing the violin or whatever, you can do that. So that also depends on each school and what they allow you to submit, because some just don't want anything because they're like, we have too many applications, we're not going to look at the extra stuff. But some do allow that, and that could set you apart if you're applying to the liberal arts college at a university. You can say, and I'm artistic too, and then that gives you a little extra sparkle.
What kind of things would the admissions officers accept in a portfolio? Can a student submit a recording of a performance? What are the other kind of things besides the monologues, of course? Is there
I think yes. I think what you're saying, it depends on the school. That's always the answer. Always the caveat up top is that it depends on the school, what they'll accept and what they won't. Oftentimes they'll suggest some ideas, you know, for what can, but if they are accepting videos, well, then that works for actors, that works for singers, that works for dancers, that works for musicians, that works for filmmakers, right? If you're a writer, a screenwriter or a TV writer or a playwright or creative writer, you write fiction or nonfiction or poetry, you could submit writing samples. So those would just be PDFs of your work that you would upload. I think, like you said, recordings, either video recordings or audio recordings. You know, we have students in, say, sound designers. They would be submitting sound files of an underscore that they created or a soundscape that they created for a short film that their friend did. Or they create their own music if you're applying for a music production program, you know. So I think however your art is, whatever your art is, there would be a way for you to show it. You know, it can be, you know, images of your visual art. It could be images of your sculpture that you have out in the yard, you know, because they're too big to bring anywhere, right? So I think, you know, if they're accepting artistic supplementary materials, I think they would probably accept it in most forms because they realize that different formats work for different art forms.
Great. I think, Natasha, you wanted to talk a little bit about what kind of monologues you could include and other materials.
Yeah, I think the main, like just a few points that I think I learned throughout the process was that embrace the culture that you're from and do what is authentic to you. You don't necessarily have to pick out the very your Eurocentric monologues. You can do monologues from Indian plays as well, or whichever culture you belong to. I think they really also do appreciate that. And I feel as if I know Chris spoke about the contrast, but if there is a monologue that you're doing and that the person who's mentoring you or may feel as if, okay, I'm not really sure about this, but if you know that, okay, you can pull this off and you have an idea, there's nothing wrong with trying it out. If it doesn't work, you can always have a backup. But the main thing is to just have that contrast and do what's right for you and authentic to you as well.
I think that's so important, Natasha, to be true to yourself and portray who you are, because that's your story. You don't have to emulate somebody else and, follow the straight and narrow. Go out there and be true to yourself. Fantastic. And don't put on that accent. They want to hear who you are.
Yeah.
Also, that accent can really fall flat otherwise.
True. And can I just also tack on one little bit to that? Because Natasha, you're so right about finding things that are true to you. It's so important with that material. As you're looking at monologues, or even songs too, but let's say specifically for monologues, you want to find material that you connect with. Like Natasha's saying, you connect with or you relate to in some way, right? So, or find material that gets you excited. You read this monologue, you're like, this character is so interesting. I can't wait. Excuse me. I can't wait to get my hands on her, right? She's so interesting. Or it's a relationship that you understand. You're like, I have had this same conversation with my mother like 85,000 times. I know exactly what this girl is thinking. So you want to find things. And like Natasha said, there might be personal things. You might understand that what the character's going through at that moment because you've been through it before or your best friend's gone through it before. Having a connection to the material is so important, not only because you're going to love doing that monologue and it'll become this much more organic, but also if you love this monologue, then you're going to be so excited to perform this monologue. It's going to make the audition process so much more pleasant because you're going to be like, I can't wait to get in that room and perform for you. Like, I'm so excited. And then, and also that passion, that enthusiasm, it'll come through in all of those auditions that you're going to do for all of these schools. And that is a wonderful thing to see that you love this art form. You found material that you love and you just can't wait to share it. So that energy is really, really important. And like what Rachna just said and Natasha, about being true to yourself. Don't think about what monologue should I do. It's what monologue do I want to do. I'm sharing myself as an artist, and this is the material I picked to share. So that's very important. Sorry, back to you.
Fantastic. So a couple of questions. Will theater majors incorporate some form of film studies?
I would say there's what some of the theater majors will have perhaps an on-camera acting class or two. They might even teach you a little bit about how the camera works. There are very few screen acting BFA programs, because there's so much more to acting than just what's on the screen. So most actor training is rooted in stage work. However, there are programs that will incorporate that aspect. And then what you want to look at, if you're interested in film studies, either if it's from a cinema study, from like an understanding of film history or understanding filmmaking, you want to look at your school, the schools that you're applying to see what are the options, what can you do, could I take a filmmaking class so that I as an actor kind of understand what's going on here. That's what I mentioned before about the Tisch Open Arts curriculum. I could, as an acting student, I could go over to the film department, take some filmmaking classes so that I start to understand what that means, and then that gives me a greater understanding. Sorry, Natasha, you wanted to do? Yeah.
Natasha, you wanted to say something.
My university, actually York University, depending on which program you take, has like very unique, interesting routes, and you can it sort of lets you design your own curriculum to a very large extent. So there are a lot of opportunities to take film classes as well, and I myself am taking a lot of like screenwriting, directing, acting classes as well. So if you're interested in having theoretical classes in film as well, if you're interested in that, then I think York is a good option for you to check out.
Go York.
Yes.
All right. So I have a question from a student who's looking to do graduate studies in theater/acting. And the question is, I'm doing my BA in mass communication. Should I apply for MA in theater/acting or a foundation program? Because my BA is all about communication. What do you suggest?
Ooh, good question. There are foundation courses. They are more popular in, say, the UK, for example. A lot of the schools there, the bigger acting schools and some of the smaller acting schools that say in London, for example, and outside and in other cities in Manchester and Liverpool, and that have a one-year foundational course, so that you can take that and kind of understand the art form. If you don't have a lot of experience in acting and theater and performing, that's not a bad idea. I'm so glad that you actually mentioned that already. That the foundational course might be really interesting. They don't seem to offer those as much here in the U.S. More a UK situation. It's more common there to have a foundation course. If you went straight for if there was a master's in theater that was not an MFA, depending on what you want to do within theater, if you wanted to continue on at a master's and there was an MA theater program, that you could probably just here certainly in the US, you could just apply to with your BA in communications, because that's a more academic thing. It's if it were a BFA in an MFA in acting, let's say, and you don't have too much acting experience, that might be a challenge, because even people who apply to MFA acting programs, they're all very, very small, 16 people or so, you sometimes have to try a few times to get into those, because they can only take 16 people, or sometimes they are happy to invite students in who have been out there pursuing the career for a little while. So often in the MFA acting programs, they're not right out of undergrad. They didn't finish their BFA and then go right. On occasion they do. I had one student from Tisch that did do that, but in often cases they go a little later. And a very good friend of mine who went to Yale Drama School, one of the top drama schools in the country, got in on his 4th audition. So it took him basically 4 years or 3 years to get in there. So those are thoughts. Yeah.
Natasha.
Goodness, sorry. So, I just wanted to. I was about to make a really enormous mistake before I met Chris. And I just want to make sure that this doesn't happen to anybody else. In school, actually, my school counselor had advice. I went to her office and I was like, oh, I want to go into like a theater school. And she just, without saying anything, she just advised me that first you do communications, then you switch to liberal arts, and then only you switch to theater, because they don't usually take a lot of international students. So if that is the advice that somebody's given you, I'd just say don't listen to it, because you can always, like, you don't have to take that route to get into a theater school. You can directly apply, and there's a possibility you get in, there's a possibility you don't, but you don't have to. If somebody's given you that advice, which I was given, please don't, like, if you don't listen to it, is what I'd say.
That's a perfect lead into our next question. How do students determine their actual chances of admission, given that there's such few spots available? And how many schools do you think a student should apply to in a cycle?
Yep, both good questions. So it's hard to determine. Most programs are on the smaller side, where they might take 16 students or 20 students. USC takes 20 acting students, for example. University of Michigan here takes 16. You know, they're very small programs. NYU is kind of a unicorn in a way. I don't know if that's really the right, and I've never used that as an analogy for NYU, but it's different because it's so big. It takes 400 students into its drama department every year. About 300 acting students, about 64 musical theater, and about 15 directors and 15 production and design students. And so it's very different. So its acceptance rate is much higher than the other schools. Just to give you an idea, at NYU, they have about 3,000 applicants. They usually accept between 500 and 600 of those. And then that boils down to the 400 that actually come, that actually enroll. Just to give you a sense of those numbers. But that's NYU. All the rest of the programs, they may not have 3,000 applicants, but even if they have 2,000 applicants for 20 spots, that's nuts, right? The acceptance rates are so low that, you know, many very talented students don't get into those programs. So that's just something to keep in mind. You know, you can add that to your research questions on the schools you're interested in, is just call them or email them, or maybe it's on their website. Usually not. You might have to do a little deeper dive to learn, you know, how many people apply to your program, how many people, you know, are accepted, or how many spots do you have, what's the size of your incoming class. Those are questions that you could ask. Also, so that's what I would say about the size of the program. And then right now I'm blanking on the second part.
How the second part of the question was how many schools do you think?
How many schools should you apply to? You know, that also varies. It depends, you know, like Natasha said, she applied to 6 schools. And so she was able to concentrate very well on those schools. And some of them, like USC, Natasha, remember, lots of writing assignments for that particular one. So she had a lot of writing to do. So it depends on how much, you know, you as a student think you can handle. I think as far as the auditions, if you're doing a performance program, you know, you're preparing a couple of 2 or 3 monologues that should be okay for like all the schools that you're applying to. So it's not like each school is 2 different monologues and you're going to have to learn 20 monologues. You're still kind of learning the same set for all those schools. So in a way, that prep is the same for all the schools. There might be some writing assignments that you need to short answer questions, or a personal statement or artist statement where you talk about why you want to study theater, why you want to come to their particular program. And so there might be some writing assignments. And then there's the organization of all of it. If you're applying to 15 schools, you have to sort out all the dates and deadlines and make sure everything's uploaded that needs to be uploaded, and you've booked your artistic review appointments all through and all of that. So there's a lot of organization too. So it's almost like where your comfort level is. I think because of the size of because it's hard, a lot of students tend to apply to a fair amount of schools, but I don't think there's a rule. It's really up to you. But here's one important piece of advice: when you are creating a list of schools to apply to, you can put some BFA programs that do require an audition on that list, but you need to put other programs and other schools that do not require an audition on that list. Don't put all your eggs in the BFA basket because it's such a subjective process, and because they're so teeny and most people don't get into them. Apply for the schools you want to apply for. Absolutely. Follow your dreams. But then also make sure you have a smart college list that gives you BA programs. There are some fantastic, wonderful, many wonderful BA programs out there for theater. Or find schools with your counselor that are good fits for you. And you're like, you know what? These are 5 schools that I would be super happy at, and they have pretty good theater departments too. Excellent. So you want to have that kind of a range so that you're not putting it all on the audition.
There's another question about the monologues. By classical monologues, colleges, do they just expect Shakespeare, or can we experiment with other classical monologues?
I would say if they sometimes they're very specific and they do say Shakespeare. But many times they will say classical, which leaves it open. So there's Shakespeare and his contemporaries, and there's plenty of other classical materials. So, you know, that could be very fun if you have that access to that or an interest in that. To bring some other type of classical theater is perfectly acceptable.
Great. And one last question, and before I present that, I just want to let all the audience know that we do have another session on the 25th of June, where we will be talking about performing arts again, but focusing on music. So please do join us. I will put down the registration link in the chat. And feel free to share that information with anybody else who might find that beneficial. The last question that we have for this evening is, can you get a degree in acting at the age of 15? And if you can, which courses or universities are offering such degrees, or are there free courses or paid online courses?
You probably at 15 couldn't get a degree because that's going to be a 4-year program, unless you happen to be a remarkable student who's extremely advanced and has advanced through your elementary and high school very quickly, and you are ready to are working at a college level. But what they do have sometimes, they have certificate programs sometimes. Those are generally for more adult learners, I would say. I think most of the things that are geared towards 15-year-olds, so high school students, are all these summer high school programs that usually are 4 weeks or 6 weeks, 8 weeks. If you, I would look around depending on where you live, if there are any courses that are offered during the school year. You can take, oftentimes you can find acting classes locally in your community or in your city or your town or a nearby town, where you could take after school classes or classes on Saturdays, on the weekends. So that would be the way to get the experience. But you wouldn't be able to get a degree that early. But there are lots of ways for you to get a lot of training so that you're ready when it comes time that you're applying to university, that you can, you'll have a lot more experience under your belt. So that's what I would say.
Natasha, you want to weigh in on that?
And one more thing that I remembered was that a lot of the feedback that I got was that people did appreciate that I actually ended up working with working professionals and theater companies in my application. They really appreciated that. So if you can't, if you don't have the resources to go to summer camps, because I know some of them are really expensive, then that is a good option. And just one last thing is that I just want to tell everybody, don't be so set, because for me, I was really set on going to one school for 6 years, and I got in, but then I went for an audition to another school, and that day itself, a couple days later, I'm like, okay, I'm switching and I'm going to York. So just things will work itself out, but yeah, just don't stress too much, because I remember I stressed out a lot, and sometimes did enjoy the process. Have fun.
Great. I think this has been just such a fantastic session. And, Chris, you've always been so generous with all of your knowledge. I've attended, as has Sharon, your workshops with for the IECA, and it's been such an eye-opening experience. Thank you so very much. And any of you who are out there who are looking to go to theater programs, I think Chris should be your first stop for any guidance and mentoring that you may need. Thank you so much, and hope to see many of you next weekend, next Friday, same time, same place. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachna. Thanks for having me. And I'm so happy you're doing this art series. I think it's a wonderful thing for the community. So that's great. Thank you for having us. And Natasha, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Natasha.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. All the best, everyone.
Thank you.